For Perkz, it really feels like a fall from grace. He was Caps before Caps was Caps.
T2 just won in winter. Like, I, as a viewer, as a fan, like, I actually don't care.
So that they can be like, oh, I've got guns! Pew, 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 pew! Buff me up with your ardent sensor, daddy!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Jungle, a 2024 League of Legends podcast. A blast from the past, maybe, but some new faces. I'm Ginny, your host, joined with Broxah, Medic, and Cubby. So let's do like a little round table and everyone can introduce themselves.
Well, I guess I can go first. I am Mr. Broxah, former pro League of Legends player, now analyst and streamer. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm Dr. Medic, I guess, if we're using our full names. I'm a League of Legends caster and recently promoted Master Tier support player. So I'm basically Diamond 4 in every other role.
I mean, congrats on that, first off. And then I'm Cubby, you know, I feel like I am like a solo helldiver hopping into this. I'm just trying to spread democracy to the EU folks over here.
Wait, are we the bugs? Are EU folks the bugs, or are we the robots?
No, I'm trying to get you to join me moving forward, you know, for the flag and not the crown in the future. You know?
We put out the SOS after NRG destroyed G2 last world. Like, we need help, guys.
True.
I mean, Broxah at one point was part of you guys.
It's true.
But, you know.
Yeah, I
have to say, I think I'm somewhere in the middle between EU and NA, even now.
We're gonna have
just
like
in the
NA,
ocean.
EU, literally, it's just like existing.
Yeah,
We're gonna have
in the
discussion.
ocean, pretty much.
And he's like, I can't speak. What am I gonna say? Well,
it's when we do the
fine.
whole section on why Team Liquid are a really bad team that Broxah's going to struggle, right? That's the issue.
Oh, he's gonna have tech issues, and he just doesn't like.
Oh yeah, guys, I'm lagging.
It is during my own time at Team Liquid that I realized that you have to be nice to NA, because everybody over there has lost faith. They've lost hope. Like, everybody's like, we go into Worlds, all teams are getting flamed before the tournament even begins because they know nobody's going to get out of groups. It's brutal, man. It's a tough time. You got to feel for them.
And then LEC still lost.
Yep.
That was great. Let's, start it straight off, Medic, with Perkz. And what happened there, because I would love to hear thoughts, opinions, emotions about that topic.
I think it's a bit of a struggle to understand exactly like how I feel about it, because Perkz has been falling off for a couple of years. Like he still performs well from time to time, but even from when he moved back to mid lane and went over to C9, I think people started to see his performance generally drop compared to 2019 when obviously they made finals. And I think with Zyru now coming in, Zyru, yes. To replace him, it's going to be really strange to see how Heretics adapts around that. I trust Peter Dunn in terms of the coaching, and I think Zyru has paid his dues in the sense that he's been around in the ERLs for a long time, consistently near the top of the LVP with Los Heretics. But for Perkz, it really feels like a fall from grace, right? Like, this guy he was Caps before Caps was Caps, right? He was the defining mid laner of Europe after the Expeke and the Froggen and the Febivin era. And
that's a throwback.
I mean, those are the guys that I started in watching League with. Like, they were the people that defined European League of Legends. Then Perkz came in 2016, 4 titles on the trot. Only Caps could defeat him in 2018 with Broxah, of course. All credit to you, Broxah. Great job.
He's just sitting there smiling.
Yeah. Were you on the 2017 roster that lost as well with Caps, or?
Yeah, I was. But I also think what's crazy about this is that Perkz was so good back then that he was one of the main reasons G2 was able to steal Caps from us, because Caps wanted to join G2 because of Perkz, and then Perkz role swapped, right? Like, his level was so incredible, and obviously he's regressed, and I think it's difficult to point out why exactly that is. There's probably different reasons. Like you said, the moment he joined C9, things went a little downhill, but overall, being in his position and getting benched now after a pretty short winter split is really rough.
I think it's really interesting as well because in retrospect, right, and only from the outside, I don't know Perkz' personal motivations, I don't know what the teams are talking about behind the scenes, but when you look at his career, you see the move back from AD carry in G2 to mid lane, and all the talk at the time was Perkz could have stayed with G2, but he said, I want to go back to mid, and Ocelot said, okay, I want Caps mid, you're going to have to go somewhere else, right? There was discussion, obviously, of Perkz going to Fnatic. I believe that was blocked, and so he went to C9. But you do wonder, at least I do, whether if Perkz had stayed as an AD carry, he was the best AD carry in our league in 2019. Like, he was a great player. Like, he was dominating. Could he have just been part of an era of G2 where their domination continued? And obviously G2's domination did still continue for a while and still does in Europe, but he could have been a consistent member alongside Caps of the greatest era of European League of Legends we probably ever seen if he was still part of that team.
I think it also depends on his motivation, right?
Sure.
I mean, him wanting to go back to mid is one thing, but I am sure he was paid truckloads of money on both C9 and Vitality, and that's something I've always really liked about Caps, and that I've always respected him for ever since, you know, the beginning of our Fnatic days. Because if he joined G2 back in the day for money, that was one thing, but he's just always wanted to be on the best team and had the highest chance of winning. And I'm not saying that's, you know, not the case for Perkz. I mean, he did do really well on C9 and won a trophy. I think they made it to quarters at Worlds too, but it's not like it's been all bad.
Sure.
But of course, as a fan, like it is really, really sad now to see him struggling and not being able to get back in the form that we kind of expect him to be in.
I think regardless of like what role he played, I mean, G2 winning with Caps and Perkz, like role swapping, like they won a split with both of them playing mid and AD, I think is one of the most badass things like in league history. Like if your team is that good that you can swap roles and still win, like, I mean, that's why they were favorites like going in. I mean, I was talking on in the yesterday about, we had a caller like, hey, I think G2 can, you know, do well at MSI. And I was thinking back to like those years. I mean, when they went international, it was like they were a favorite. Like they were expected to win. Like they were expected to be top 3, top 4. And I don't know. I feel like Perkz like is a huge part of EU history because of that. And I mean, my thing is that like when it comes to league and games, like at least anything like in terms of competition, longevity is always great, and it's always so difficult to just be on top of your game for that long, right? And I don't know about, you know, Perkz and his current form right now. Like obviously it's not where he wants it to be. I'm kind of curious like where he goes from here, but yeah, definitely you know, waking up at least over here in America and seeing on Twitter, you know, Perkz had a pretty funny like hashtag throwback tweet to like something that, you know, Heretics were throwing out back when they started, and now seeing him gone, it's kind of wild. And I'm really curious to see if he makes a bounce back, because he's fun to watch and is a huge part of league history. So
yeah, for me as well as like someone who's a little bit newer to the scene in terms of like, you guys are referencing like 2018, 2019, bro. I didn't even know League of Legends existed back in that time. So it is a throwback for me. Like I am just like absorbing all the knowledge, but it's like for someone who's newer to the scene and someone who's like like learning from these players as you know, days go on. The question for me then is like, what's next? Because you're talking about a player who obviously has had one of the most impactful careers in League of Legends, and then now they're no longer even on the main roster. So what's next? Like, is there a way to just like magically get better? Is it more than just like getting better and getting back into top form and just like competing? What's the next step? Realistically, what could we be expecting?
I think Perkz is in a very difficult position right now, because when you're a League of Legends player, you're pretty much being judged off of your most recent performances or your most recent year, meaning that none of the team managers or coaches are going to care about what Perkz achieved in the past anymore. Like, that's all irrelevant. I think it secured him some spots on C9, Vitality, Heretics, but at some point, if you keep failing and if you're not having the same amount of success, then it just doesn't do anything. And going into this year of the LEC, I thought that this was a huge opportunity for Perkz, because Heretics had a lineup full of players that have all won in the past, a coach that has been really successful. So this should have been his redemption story. And I think with him being benched at this point in time, he has a very tough decision to make. He pretty much has to decide if he wants to grind out games in Academy to try to get back to the top, like let's say the Reckless route, for example. Just try to start somewhere in academy and see if you can eventually convince people that you're still at that LEC level and you can compete. Or you may have to find something else to do, because realistically, from what we've seen from the new guy coming in, he's been doing fantastic in the ELs. They're 12-2, and I think that's part of why they're also giving him a shot now. And if he can play at a similar level, then Perkz very likely is going to be out of Heretics entirely at this point.
I think even if he doesn't play at a similar level, or like even if he doesn't perform as well as perhaps some people who watch the ERLs expect Zyru to, you probably keep him in. I'll be honest. Unless Perkz like grinds out solo queue, gets high on the rank ladder, and has sessions with Peter Dunn where Peter Dunn's like, oh yeah, actually Perkz seems to have really learned what he wants to do, has great scrim results. I think it feels like a changing of the guards, and it feels like Perkz has had those opportunities, as we say, on Vitality, now on Heretics. He's had the team built around him in a way that, unless you show a dramatic shift in how hard you are pushing to improve, I think it's very difficult to justify bringing Perkz back in unless Zyru is really bad, like is 20-30% worse than Perkz is right now.
I know performance is one thing, but wasn't this like kind of tripped by a team manager, someone like Crawl? Like that's kind of the rumor that's flying around right now. I don't know.
I did see that rumor as well.
I saw
that he had a fight with a manager.
Yeah. So I mean, I know his gameplay wasn't great. Like, is it 100% gameplay too? I mean, I don't know, right? I don't want to speculate too much there, but
it's one of those you can only be a dickhead if you're really good at the game, and you can be one.
Oh, you get a free pass.
You can be one or the other, right? You can either be a dickhead and really good at the game, or you can be bad at the game and really nice. But you can't be a dickhead and bad at the game, because then you just get kicked, right? And I'm not saying Perkz has been a dick, but as you say, the rumor going around is that he had a fight with his manager or a fight with someone within the team, and his performance doesn't justify doing that. If it was 2016 Perkz and he was destroying the league, you eat it. You say, okay, cool, I'll take a bit of humble pie here because you're winning us trophies, but Perkz wasn't good enough this split to.
Yeah.
I think it's in some way it's interesting, but also exciting and positive that managers and coaches are starting to put their foot down, though, because back in my days, I've seen plenty of crazy stuff happening behind the scenes, especially during
you were a
losses
twat to all of your managers, weren't you? You were just
reckless and all fist fight and all that good stuff. But no, but really,
Mr. Nice Guy was a brand shot.
It felt like most players could do exactly whatever they wanted, and nothing would ever happen, not until the year was over, at least, because once that year has already began, you kind of know that the level of play in the academy wouldn't be good enough to join the LEC LCS right away, so you would just save for a year, and then everyone could completely unleash if that's what they wanted. And now, obviously, with winter to spring split, it puts Heretics in a position where they can afford this a bit more, and they can take a risk. But it also happens with BDS. Like, they benched Adam for attitude problems before their most important series of the entire year, where they could have potentially even won the LEC split, and they benched him anyways.
Could they? Like, we watched the same G2 play.
I thought at the very least they would have stomped Matt, and they would have made it to the final.
Okay.
And then all the 4 players that were left and who had played, I think, one day of scrims with their sub-top lane or just a couple of games, they looked monster tilted going into the series because, it was just lost. It was just lost. But at the same time, they put their foot down and they're like, hey, this is supposed to be a professional environment and you cannot act in this way. You have to show respect to everybody around you. And at the end of the day, I think for the league to turn into a professional sport where everything is, really nicely structured and people can treat each other with respect and work together in the long run, these things are necessary.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think there's actually a big discussion point around how league pros develop and why that leads to a lot of these sorts of issues behind the scenes. Because as a pro, and Broxah, you have much more insight into this than I do, right? But the general pathway is, okay, you start playing League of Legends when you're quite young. You grind solo queue a lot until you're high elo, and the only person you rely on to learn how to play well in solo queue is yourself a lot of the time. Maybe you'll look at resources in other places, but when you're in the game, the only person that gives any insight is you, right? So you have to be slightly narcissistic to be good at solo queue and to be good and to get to challenger. And then from there, you get put into a team environment where someone who you don't know from Adam is telling you how to play the game. And it's very easy to be like, actually, I know best, because I've had to know best for the last 3 years when I was climbing the solo queue ladder. And I have talked to managers, and a lot of them say this is a big issue that you find with new players, because they come in expecting to know best, and when someone tells them that they're wrong, they entirely disagree with it. And obviously there are aberrations to that. Like Broxah, I think you're a great example of someone that is very good at learning and taking things on. I think people like Core JJ are great examples of that as well. And like Faker, etc., right? But a lot of the time you do see people who are slightly more narcissistic, not in a bad way, just in a way that is how you have to be to climb the ladder. And there's studies that show that's how you have to be to climb the League of Legends ladder. Then are put into a team environment and don't know how to act because they've spent 3 years, 10 hours a day in their bedrooms trying to climb the solo queue ladder and not interacting on a personal way with other people.
I was actually shocked at first when, I came into the league, both on Fnatic, but also playing in the ERLs for some months before that, because the only real background I had in teams like this was playing football when I grew up, like playing sports. And in all sports, you have to listen to what your coach is saying 100% of the time, because if you don't, you're going to sit on the bench and you're not going to be part of the big games. But here, in most years I had as a pro, the players actually are in control, and the players can do pretty much whatever they want. They can get coach fired, they can get managers fired. They just have too much power, and it creates a really weird dynamic where, like you said, these guys that have spent a very unhealthy amount of time at the PC throughout their teens, and in a lot of cases don't have the greatest social skills, they have so much power, they have so many fans following them, there's all this pressure and tension, everybody wants to be the superstar and wants to have their attention 100% of the time. That's difficult to manage as a jungler, by the way. It's kind of like solo queue when it comes to that, I swear. It's a tough time out there. 1v4, even in pro play. But it's just so chaotic and messy, and I've always wondered why it is this way. And I think at times when we have seen teams like the 2019 G2 that looked like a bunch of friends that were so happy and that clearly were on the same page and where everybody really wanted to work together, no wonder they're successful. Matt, a team of a bunch of rookies this year, were expected to be at the bottom by most of us analysts, but they are also amazing. And I think, sure, they're great players, but part of it is that structure and cohesion, and it's something we're seeing a lot of teams lack, especially with a lot of veterans. And I guess now, when the veterans are out of line, like Perkz and Adam, well, finally we're doing something about it to work on creating that professional environment.
So,
I go ahead.
Team managers 2-0 this split is what I'm learning for LEC.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah,
yeah, so far, actually, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will hop in and say, like, if people are like, wow, they got 3 LEC people, like, where's the LCS talent, right? And my experience is very much in the Dev League. But before that, when I was in college, I co-founded one of the first varsity esports programs out here, the D1 school. This will be fun, too, because Broxah doesn't know this. But Broxah, when you were at Team Liquid, your head of data would have been Hatham, right?
Yes, I think that is correct.
I went to college with him, and we coached the team together, which is kind of fun. And cool. We definitely saw, like, we couldn't get scholarships. We were just pulling kids off campus. And my strongest player for the 4 years, he had no team sport experience. And that was probably the biggest hurdle, was like getting him to work with his team. And one of the biggest wins for me throughout college was seeing him grow in the program, right? Because he got to be a much better teammate. And by senior year, like, the guys voted on him to be captain, and he was great. When I was gone, you definitely, like, it just kind of depends. I feel I'm very biased towards team sports. I feel like team sports are really good for development early on. That's a different discussion, so I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But I think it's something where I find it interesting how it's skewing this way, especially given that Meteos on the dive just this week over here in NA was like, I think players should have more control, right? And in my league for challengers, we actually have a player coach in Niles who was in LCS at one point. He's leading his Maryville team, and like they're second best in the league. They're doing really good. He was coaching the team full time last split. They wanted them to play, and like they're doing great, right? So I find it really interesting, kind of like hearing both perspectives, and I want to side more with you, Broxah, like especially given what I've heard, but I obviously like there's a middle ground of that as well, right?
Yeah, I think there was a symbiosis, and it reminded me of a Ted Lasso episode where so Ted Lasso is a show about Football Manager, an American football manager that goes over to the UK. He's never coached football before, and he has a player called Jamie Tart who is an absolute prick. Like his whole thing is he's not very kind to other people. He's very self-centered, and it's the same on the pitch, right? Ted Lasso teaches him how to not be a prick, basically, on the pitch, and he helps everyone else out. And then the other coach comes in and says, well, the problem is now you've made him not be a prick, and so he's not very good at the game anymore because he's thinking too much about everyone else. And I think that balance of sometimes a player does just need to be a prick. Sometimes they need to say, okay, make this game all about me. I can win from this position. This draft is bad. We need to pick this thing. And the problem is that you don't always have that balance, right? Too often the players are too much in control and don't trust the manager. And then if you swing it too much the other way, the players can't do what they're great at, which is skill checking their opponents, outplaying their opponents, realizing that they can get in their opponents' heads, right? So there is a symbiosis you have to find. And I think maybe we're slowly erring a little bit more towards manager control, at least in the LEC. But part of that as well is we have a very well-developed ERL ecosystem. So players are under more threat if they do speak out to just be replaced, right? Like Perkz is replaced, Adam was replaced. When you have good lower tier players that you think you can sub in, it's a bit easier to have the managers have more power. So
yeah, I think it's very much down to finding that balance, because I think as well, like you guys have touched upon competitive like sports, specifically football, like that comes back down to the fact that there are so many people who play football. Like everybody and their grandpa played football growing up. So it's like if you're just like terrible and you also talk too much, they can actually bench you. I think that's like the great thing about the ERLs in terms of like you can have the talent move up and down, but in general, like when you're looking at the population size of people who actually play competitive League of Legends or competitive video games in general, in comparison to the whole population, and then who are actually good at it, I think, yeah, to an extent, of course, like managers can tell people to like sit down and be a little bit more professional, but at what cost? Because we already touched upon like the BDS game and how they like, you know, swap out their top laner. People are looking tilted. Like, do you want to lose a series because you want to swap out a player? Like, there has to be, you know, give and take, and a balance needs to be found. Absolutely agree. But I also feel like in general in esports, not just like players, like this goes like across the board. A lot of people struggle a lot with anxiety, but also just like not feeling too secure in their jobs. So if players also don't feel that way, is that going to impact how they play? Because they're like, oh, if I like make too many mistakes, I'm going to get replaced. So I need to like play like a robot. And then they don't feel like they can actually play their game because they're too busy thinking about, wait, but if I do an oopsie, then I'm out.
It's possible. I know I have it a lot with casting, right? Like it took me 4 years to get out of the every cast could be your last sort of mentality. And even now I'm still in it to a degree. I think a lot of people in the space they have a hyper competitive streak though. Like you sacrifice a lot to be the best at what you want to do. And that's the reason that we're in the space that we're in. It's not the same as working an office job where some days you just call it in on a 9 to 5, right? You just sit there and you do some spreadsheets or something. And that's not like demeaning office jobs. It's just a very different skill set and a very different drive you have to be a talent, whether it's a player or a manager or a coach or a caster or whatever. So
yeah. But with that, Heretics is going to be on the LEC for spring without Perkz. So something that everybody's going to be looking forward to. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Heretics in terms of how they're going to performing. But that's not the only thing that the LEC is changing this time around. It's also the fact that we're going to have pre-recorded drafts. Like, I wish I could see players just like jaw to the floor, eyes wide open. Yo, did they really just pick that? I hope we still get to see that to an extent, because I'd be really sad if that's not the case. But what are we thinking about that, Medic? More from like a talent perspective of like writing a storyline into that draft, into the game of like, they did not expect that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, firstly, I found out today via Twitter, so I haven't had a huge amount of time to understand exactly how things are working with it. We're having a meeting about stuff on Thursday, so I'll see exactly how it works. But my assumption is it will follow the sort of LCS template, which is the draft is pre-recorded, but you still play it back. So we still watch it in real time-ish, maybe a little bit faster. And we'll still be able to analyze the draft as it goes through. So in terms of the analysis of the draft, it doesn't change too much because you're still seeing, pick, you're still seeing the reactions, etc. But you don't get to see the live player reactions, as you say, which kind of sucks. I will say, though, draft tends to be... there aren't as many curveballs as fans seem to think there are in draft. Like... the amount of times I can be like, oh, they picked this. Oh, that's a little surprising, but it's not like they're not playing a Smolder jungle or something, right? If that does happen, of course.
Play Smolder jungle.
I mean, if they do that, sure, that's interesting. But most of the time, I think the draft is interesting in the fact that you're working out how the teams play against each other. But I don't think we often see much jaw-dropping stuff anymore in draft because of how solved drafting is as a concept.
So I have like a small theory. There's been a lot of discussion about LCS versus LEC in terms of strength of the region. I think the fact that like Broxah, if you had 10 more minutes to think about a draft, like how much would that clean up gameplay just across the board?
Well, so before answering that question, I just want to know, like, what exactly is the process like? So the draft is pre-recorded, it happens backstage. So if I'm a player, do I just sit backstage being told what the draft is, and then I have like 10 minutes to discuss it with my coaches and teammates before we go on stage to play the game?
Yeah, so how it works in LCS is about like when the current game is in like the 15-minute mark, they start drafting for the next game. And so they do this from their team rooms. And then the draft is completed, pre-recorded, and then, yes, you do have the extra time. So, like, it's not like stage games where pretty much from, 5 pick on red to when you spawn into the game is probably 2 minutes. Yeah, like 2 minutes tops, right? Now you have, like, it could be 20 minutes. Like, if the other game goes into a pause, you could have an hour to talk about this draft.
And they don't stop you from talking about it, importantly. There's no, you can't communicate or anything after this. You have all that extra time.
I think that is a crazy change that's way more impactful than people think. Because normally, when you're drafting on stage, your coach at the end, once all champions are locked in, will have maximum 1 minute to tell you what they want to say and how they want you to play the game from their point of view. Often it's even less. And now having all this time to talk about level 1 strategies and early game, and like you can literally pre-plan the entire first 10 minutes for jungle, for example, and how the lane should play, etc. So I think it definitely makes it more important to have like really solid people on the coaching staff and really solid people behind you to help analyze exactly how all matchups play out, how jungle plays out, and finding out how you want to play the game, because that can also be an issue generally. Like, let's say going into the game, generally the coach would outline like, hey, this is how I think we should approach the early game, this is what you guys should do in mid late game, and then they're gone, and then the players on their own, and then I as a jungler would figure out with the laners, how the lane matchup's going to play out according to them. How do they think we should approach the game? And then I make my plan, and then we dive into it. And if somebody disagrees with that plan, well, that sucks. They'll just have to suck it up. But here, everybody can actually really, like, let's say if there's a spicy matchup top, let's say the enemy top laner picks Vayne. My top laner can spend so much time describing to everybody exactly how to destroy this Vayne and make her life miserable, right? Let's say back in the day when we locked in Vayne, mid, and Fnatic, imagine if they could plan exactly how to approach it and destroy Caps' Vayne. Like, it probably would have been an entirely different game. So
don't jump forward into Vayne as Tristana, I think is the general rule in that sort of
all I'm hearing at this point is like G2's early game being a little questionable during winter. Now they have like 10 minutes at least to talk about how they're not going to suck. Yeah, they're going to win again.
Other team, though, they have 10 minutes to be like, what the hell is Yike doing level 1,
Yeah, I don't think that matters. I think G2 are going to win again no matter
Yeah,
what. Like, we could give them half the time of the other teams.
Yeah.
We just indirectly buffed them.
Yeah, it is super interesting though, and I think I've been in a few scrims recently because I joined like a Prime League Division 3 team as their sub, and like literally the time between the end of Champ Select and the game, as Broxah said, is just, hey guys, who has prio? Okay, what's the jungler going to do, like level 1 to level 4 or something? And maybe on like Broxah's level team, they discuss a little bit more, but it just gives you so much more time. And I think we will see, as Ginny pointed out, like teams that struggle in the early game being able to show it up a lot more. And we saw that in LCS. Like the general discussion on if LCS is better than LEC, I think stems a lot from the fact that early games in LCS look a lot stronger than they used to do. Teams are much better at exploiting weaknesses and finding gaps in which they can play. And LCS mid-game, I think... I know, but like we're talking about this year, okay? Please, Ginny. Okay. Please, like, I'm gonna get PTSD.
Thanks, Ginny. I appreciate the reminder. Actually,
I can't look at any word that has those letters in it. You know, anything that says like an N, an R, and a G. I'm just like, no, avoid those words. It just triggers me from last year. Yeah. But yeah, I think the LCS mid game still looks a little bit questionable because it's a lot harder to pre-plan a mid game because you know teams change things around there. But I wonder which team in like the LEC this would really affect. MDK, I think, it feels like quite a vibes team, and Elioya's control of the early game is really strong. They like to play through bot side, like they push up through bot and then play into bot side jungle. So I'm wondering if that might be hampered a little bit by the fact the other team has so much time to prepare for what is a relatively, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but it was a very common strategy for them to do bot prio into bot lane, bot side invade into Elioya getting leads. So I do wonder if MDK might be hampered a little bit by this, especially since, as far as I know, teams only found out relatively recently. Like, you haven't had a huge amount of time to bring in another analyst to prepare, you know, oh, this is our 20-minute of pause mid-game analyst who comes in and discusses the draft with our team, you know?
No, but can you, like, imagine, like, there's a tech pause in the game happening before you, right after you locked in draft, and you have, like, an hour to think about that, whereas another team was, like, a 25-minute stomp.
Yeah.
And
how does it affect international play as well? Does it change for internationals? Because in which case, like, you have Elioya and MDK who've had 30 minutes on average to prepare, and now they get 1 minute on average to prepare, right? Like, and LCK's been doing this the whole time. How does that work? Is that what's going to happen at MSI?
That could be that's going to be a wild discussion to see the Eastern teams push back on this.
What's new?
Yeah.
We're going to get rolled.
I mean, yeah, sure. But
yeah.
At least we can blame it on this now.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, we now have an excuse.
Oh no, guys, it was the format. We just got like we need more best of threes, and we need LCK to have to be silent for 30 minutes before the game.
That's the LCS Copium playbook, man. The format and best of ones. We can all have it now.
We're turning into the LCS. That sounds sad. Broxah.
Hey guys, like and subscribe.
Wow, that's really nice.
Is that something that you hear often on the LCS? Is that why
no, but it's the sort of like, it's viral marketing, right? You need to surprise the audience with it. So if you build up into it, they automatically turn off. But because I just said it randomly, now they're like, oh, I should do that.
Like and subscribe because I want to see
I'm pretty sure we were surprised.
Yeah, exactly. I was surprised.
Every episode, just at a random moment, I'm just going to shout those words.
Now people are going to watch just so that they see whether or not there's like a correlation. Yeah. You're in their heads.
See,
this is why you got promoted recently. You're like, okay, mind games. I see it. Yeah.
Well,
anyway, draft.
I was thinking for the pre-recorded stuff, like there's really two ways to look at it. One is a team like G2 that's generally on the same page and that has 5 so strong individuals are just going to use it to like completely steamroll everybody with a really clean early game plan because they're already so good individually. Now making sure that they are 100% playing for the right game plan and making the right steps to actually have a good early game, man, good luck beating them. But I was also thinking of a team like Fnatic, because Fnatic have like no control of anything. Like that team is a complete mess. It often just looks like your typical jungle game in solo queue where Razork is like running from lane to lane like a complete maniac, trying to stop his lanes from running it down and feeding their butts off. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, because they're too busy flaming him in chat and simply don't play the game.
Are you projecting? Like, are you okay?
It's the Fnatic jungle mindset. He's been there.
I feel so bad for this boy. Like, he's been playing like an absolute monster, but everybody's just running it. And I wonder if them having more time to actually discuss how to approach the game before it begins can prevent that from happening, and can actually give this poor jungler a bit of assistance to make sure that the troops around him know how to play their matchups so they don't run it down. That's all I want to say.
Should we start like a Fnatic jungler support group?
Yes.
Yeah.
I really... Razork was the second best jungler of the split. Easily. Maybe the best. Like,
that could be a great LEC segment with Broxah, the Fnatic.
Broxah flames Fnatic.
Yeah. And there's like
Broxah doesn't flame. He doesn't flame Fnatic. He looks out for poor innocent junglers that are undergoing abuse.
What about the poor innocent AD carry players?
It's a good segment.
No, they suck.
Who cares about AD carries? Like, no one cares about AD carries.
They boss the junglers around.
Personal support. They have a personal support helping them the entire game.
And
this is the issue, Broxah.
Forgets about the lane. Hello.
You know how everyone on Twitter right now is really mad, and on Reddit, about how AD carries are weak. I think we've just solved the problem, right? It's because supports are now strong enough they can just leave the lane, right? And supports, I think we can all agree, are slightly too strong, right? But AD carries just want a Yuumi. That's all they want. They want someone that is actually just attached to them. They want supports to not have a fun time so that they can be like, oh, I've got guns. Pew, 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 pew. Oh, buff me up with your ardent sensor, daddy. It's like fucking AD carries just have attachment issues and like
issues.
It's disgusting. It's actually gross. Play Syndra, play Teleport Ziggs, play Seraphine.
Then I might as well play mid lane. What's the point?
Well, no, because it's not called AD carry anymore. It's bot lane. You guys haven't changed your mindset around a role since season 1, and that's when you used to run mid, and now you just run it down instead. Like, AD carries are the most coddled role in the game, and they don't realize it, and that is what is it just pisses me off as a support main.
So we should start a support group for supports as well.
No, supports are OP.
Supports
are way too strong.
It's so OP in solo queue. Oh my god,
okay.
You don't...
If Freak can get Grandmaster and I can get Master, support is too strong. I think that's what we've worked out.
Whoa, okay, well, great.
AD carries are weak, but you can play a different role. That's the issue. Like, sometimes a style of champion is just weak. Sometimes Enchanter supports are weak, sometimes Melee supports are weak, sometimes Mages are weak, Assassins are always weak because they're not fun to play against, sometimes Tanks are weak, Bruisers rarely weak because for some reason Riot loves Bruisers, but AD carries just haven't changed their playstyle in 10, 15 years. They've always said, I just want to play someone that shoots a gun. And it's like, sometimes you have to play someone that chucks a ball. Sometimes you have to play someone that has a bomb. Just do something else.
But
play a different game. Go play Helldivers. I don't give a shit. Leave. A 2 support spot lane would be better.
On the Rift, you would want to, it's the ego. I'll be honest.
You can't space glide. Don't lie.
No, I mean. Back to this whole discussion of poor junglers and having like a draft that you can actually think about in a prolonged period of time. I think we talked about how that's going to be changing up the dynamic in terms of like teams and how it goes onto that international stage. I find that really interesting because like LCS and LEC, LCS has like 8 teams, LEC has 10 teams. In your perspective, Cubby, I mean, I know you're going to say yes. Does it make the LEC more competitive?
The LEC or the LCS?
The LEC.
Okay.
I had him. You sold me out.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's weird because I feel like there still is a bit of a gap from our bottom teams and our top teams. I mean, again, I covered Challengers League, right? There have been some splits where I feel like the top Challengers League team would be competitive in LCS, and I feel that way again this split with FlyQuest Challengers. So I feel like there's still depth, and there are a lot of people missing from the league. That's just like a bummer, Like I don't get to watch the Karish, Spica, or Sven compete, and I think everyone like really misses that. You can make a good team with a lot of the free agents that just we're left without jobs, or like had jobs lined up, and then with EG and GG getting ace towards the end, they just don't have many more. I don't know. I feel like the thing that makes it feel more competitive is just the fact that like we only have 14 games, which having 14 best of ones for every team in the league, I think is gross and not enough games. But as a fan of American football, where you only have 17 games in a season, it does make for very exciting moments because every game really matters a lot.
And at least it's not Valorant where you play like 2 BO3s and then you're out.
Yeah, it could be worse, So I don't know. I think
but
that
you get to do those on stage, right, Ginny? So
True.
The main stage, not the broom closet.
You don't like the broom closet?
No.
Isn't that like standard for like league players to like play from the basement or the broom?
I feel like Wyatt did a nice job for making sure that everyone could live out their dreams of being Harry Potter for a week. I thought Zazel had a nice singer. And I will say, as much grief as I'm giving it, I feel like the broadcast actually did their best job with the circumstances. Like, I like the fact that we're handing the mics to players, like, while draft was going. And, like, Blippo was like, we don't see it on screen yet, but spoiler, we picked Olaf, and it's really turbo this game, right? Like, that was a pretty funny moment, right?
Yeah.
I feel like they got some good moments out of it. But, yeah, I mean, everyone just watches LPL and LCK only for 2 weeks with no LEC gameplay. And then LCS comes back, and everyone's like, oh, this region was actually dog the entire time when they had 2 weeks off and shoved them all in the closet to play their games. Like, yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate the difference for the players as well, playing in a different environment. You practice on stage, you've probably done some practice scrims, then you played all your best of ones there. I want to come back to the point about the LCS broadcasts, because I actually think over the last year and a half, the LCS broadcast has been popping off. Like, I think it's been, the segments they do are really good. I like the structure of the show. I think they've been super entertaining. There's a lot of stuff there that I wish we did more of with LEC. I think there were some changes.
Twice, if they're making you say this.
Oh, no, I'm not paid by NA at all. I'm definitely not going there next year. Jokes. I'd never leave EU. But yeah, I think some of the things are a bit over the top. Like, I'm not a massive fan of how much Twitch chat integration they do with like, oh, choose who we're going to interview and such. But I think generally, like, this direction of the show has been really enjoyable. And I wonder if it's like the push towards sort of more condensed segments is good, while still maintaining a level of analysis, which I really enjoy. So LCS has been good. That's what I was trying to say there. I don't know why it went on a long spiel. LCS good. I like it.
LEC, well, LCS good. LEC
better because I'm there, obviously, but like.
Okay. Yeah, that's like, we got Medic. They have Twitch chat integration.
And, they have Flowers, the best play-by-play in the world, so.
Yeah. Look at him go.
Yeah.
I think Broxah as well, you being on the analyst desk on the LEC, like, obviously you're not new to it, but how have you been finding that in terms of like the format that's being played? Because we also have 5 BO1s a day. How do you think that measures up from the LEC structure to like the international stage? Because then we're going to be looking at longer series.
So I think the LEC format stuff has been an ongoing discussion ever since I entered the league in 2017. Like, should we have best of ones? We had best of twos for a while, then we had best of threes.
Oh.
And what people
Jenny
forget,
just shocked by this big bit of we had best of
like,
twos.
the best of two was a banger. I remember
Don't
the
get
best
me
of
down
twos
best of
discussions.
twos. I love best of twos.
I think the reason was something like they like draws in EU. It's okay.
We like
just
ties.
give them best of
We
two.
like ties.
They like ties.
Yeah.
Like, it was wild. Like I was triggered out of my mind. But either way, I think people forget that it completely destroyed the viewership. Like, the viewers hated having to watch a best of two or a best of three between Astralis and
Giants.
I don't even know who was playing back then. Yeah, Giants Gaming. Like, the viewership was completely doomed. And they were like running 2 streams at once for a while, which wasn't great either. And they tried all sorts of things to make it work, but in terms of viewership, it just didn't. And I think that was a shame. And maybe a solution could be to do something different and to knock out the lower tier teams like even quicker than we do now, to get to see more of like G2 Fnatic, G2 Mad, etc. But I think for viewership, what is being done in the LEC now to the format is great. I think it's it's really hype and it's really exciting. The one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of is that like winning a split doesn't feel as impactful anymore. It's like G2 just won in winter. Like I, as a viewer, as a fan, like I actually don't care. Like it's irrelevant to me because they played so few games to make it happen. And in reality, G2 could end up winning 4 splits. So it doesn't feel as hype and as significant as it used to. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think in terms of competition with the East, I don't think it really matters if we play best of 1 or best of 3. I think what matters is the amount of games that we play on stage, the amount of official games we have with viewers and with casters and under the pressure, etc. Because you learn 2 or 3 times as much from playing those games rather than scrims. It's like an entirely different game because, you know, with nerves and all, like everybody changes in some way or the other, and that's when you really know what your team is like. So I think increasing the amount of games played and not having big breaks like we've had just now, I think that's better, because when all teams are in LA or in Berlin, it's not like they're gonna have time off. Like I can promise you, maybe if those teams are lucky, they had like 1 or 2 days off during the break anyways. They're still scrimming, so you might as well have them play official games, even if some of those are offline and from home, like we did during the COVID days.
Yeah, I did. I talked to a couple of the teams, and some of them had a whole week off, Mass. Can you believe it? Both G2 and BDS both had a whole week off.
They had time off?
They had a whole week. Yeah, I know.
It's a new world, Broxah.
No wonder we're losing.
You started
exactly. I was thinking
managers are
playing
winning
the whole time.
We have vacation.
I was gonna say you're too old, but that felt really rude. But like you started esports too early.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to come back to the point about more stage games, because I think I agree with you. And obviously you have much more insight into how it is to play on stage than I do. But I think one of the issues that we have with the current format is we introduced it to give teams more games, right? If you come 9th or 10th, you play less games over the course of the year by like 7 games or something than you would have in the past. But if you get any higher than that, you play more games. I think the issue with the LEC format is it is too quick to start eliminating teams and make matchups have too many stakes. In terms of, and this is going to sound weird, because from an entertainment point of view, you want games to have stakes, right? It's much easier to build a narrative and be like, hey, this game's really important because you qualify for the grand upper, lower bracket semi-finals of the tournament, right? It's great. But when you are playing that many big stakes games in such a short period of time, you actually don't have as much time to experiment and to adjust to playing on stage as much. Because every game is like this adrenaline fueled, you must win, otherwise you're out. Otherwise you get knocked out and you have to take a 4-week break before you can win the next tournament. And I think my struggle with the LEC format is partly I can't even get the nomenclature right. The splits don't feel like they matter, as you say, like G2 winning winter doesn't feel like it matters at all. But also, because the games are so impactful, teams don't have the time to be like, actually, this week, we're going to try and work on our mid game. And if we lose both these games, sure, that sucks, right? But we have 15 more best of 3s where we know we can make it into playoffs and we can get a high position. G2 have the luxury of saying, this split, we're just going to work on our mid games because they're better than everyone else in the league. So they could focus on that. They didn't just have to focus on winning. But every other team in the league really has to say, we have to play what's going to let us win this week because we need to win. And I wonder if going back to a 2-split format where the finals feel more impactful would actually be better, but we just have longer splits. Yes, you'll lose some viewership in the middle, and that sucks from an entertainment point of view and from a viewership point of view, but your teams will improve. And for the actual quality of the games, I think you'll get a better quality overall. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Mads or Cubby, because to me, that seems to make more sense.
So I'll be honest, like when I saw 3 splits being announced for LEC, I thought it was like, oh wow, Riot's going to test this, and if it works out, there'll just be another international tournament, you know? Like
that's what we all thought as well, by the way. Like we thought there was going to be one after winter. Which
I would love. I think that like in America's tournament or like, you know, NA versus EU and like LPL versus LCS, like that'd be fun, I think, for everyone. So that's regardless. On the bright side, you might have to win every game, but if you don't, then you have plenty of time to work in your mid games if you're out, which I know is an argument if that was made. And honestly, like we saw, I know Fnatic last year, like they struggled for the first 2 splits, but then they really did emerge in summer once they got Noah, and like that was a big thing. And they, like, I think having some of the extra time, like they felt like in the end actually helped them. And I think that if you are a good team with a good staff, you want time. I know getting eliminated obviously sucks, like you have less stage games, but you can do a lot with time if you have a good staff, right? And you're able to like actually drill down what you need to work on. I love the phases of this. One of my favorite tournament formats is just what Dota 2 always does for the international. They have 2 big groups of 9, and they all play the groups at the same time, which Riot will never do it because they have overlapping games. But everyone plays it out, and then if you're top 4 in the group, you have 2 lives in the bracket. If you're 5 through 8, you have 1 life in the bracket, and then if you're 9th, you're out. And I feel like the LEC format of like doing one, like, you know, round robin, everyone plays each other, bottom 2 teams are out, and then best of 3s for seeding like best of 5s. I actually like that a lot. And I think that fits for League. I think if you found a way to maybe extend that, or like have the first like be like have it be like a single round robin for best of 3s, like then I don't know what you do there, but I can see you like going back to 2 splits. I feel like that'd be good, but I actually really like the 3 phases of the tournament that you have right now. Like for me, I find it really exciting tuning in and knowing that a lot of, like every game pretty much does have weight.
Yeah,
I think personally, I just want to have as many games as humanly possible that are official. I think that's what we're going to gain the most from. And I think your point about time is also really solid and valuable, because that's another issue that I think has always been there in League, that we never give the teams time. Like in this case, going into spring split, at least 3, if not 4 teams, something along those lines, has made a player change or a coach change. Some of those teams got to play like 9 games together, and they're already making a change. Every time you make a change, even if just one person, you're kind of starting from ground zero again, and then you have to rebuild. And it's a mistake that's happened so frequently. I think G2 is really the only org in EU and NA that have twice now sticked to their lineup and just, added a few extra pieces on the coaching staff. And usually, obviously, there can be cases where you have to make changes. Don't get me wrong, but often if you see something that's generally working, and you just scratch everything because the team is having like 1 or 2 bad games, I think that's such a big shame. Like just giving people time to like really figure out the problems and to build something bigger together as a team can really make a difference in the long run. Because when you reach a certain level in League, sure, individual play matters, but being a better team and always being on the same page can really take you far, also internationally, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I know in NA, NRG credited a lot. Like, I will credit them with this, and they cited this. Like, the changes that they made were small, and they added staff behind them as well. So, like, they swapped out the bot lane for FBI Ignar. Like, they felt like their top side was working, and they're like, hey, if we make this change, like, we can keep a lot of the progress we have. Like, we aren't changing a lot of people, and then we can kind of build on it and go from there. And I feel like you can see success with, like, small roster changes, like iterations. Like, sometimes you are forced to make a change, but at least if you keep most of the core, like, yes, you're going to have to start from scratch, but also you can keep a lot of the work that, like, was put in. And I know that NRG felt like they were able to pull that off with, like, some of what they did in the back half. And I think they really ended up playing into their success this past year.
I think there's specific roles that do that better. Right? If you replace your whole bot lane, that's a little bit easier. Jungle is probably the hardest one to, like, switch in and out because of how much
marksman's plug and play. Yeah.
I mean, we don't even call them marksmen. They're bot laners. Make them play Seraphis. Come on.
Not even AD carries anymore. They're bot laners.
Bot laners.
Wow. That's
bottom of the food pile.
Literally, nobody actually gives a flying fuck about these bot laners. But actually, when we're looking at bot laners, though, like more in that like competitive sense of thing, it does feel like solo queue, it doesn't matter. But when we're looking at competitive, I think that's the whole debate that we had around like Nami Lucian in like the LEC in comparison to like the LCK. It's like, it's not a hands diff. Maybe sometimes it is. But it's also like, it is a hands diff. But the copium that's been running around is like the play style diff in terms of how the teams play around the Nami Lucian bot lane. The ADC Lucian can also be, taken into consideration.
I mean, I think that if you have players at the skill that like these top teams have, I do think that marksman is like a broken role in comp. I really feel like that. Like, but your marksman, if your marksman is Ruler or Guma, like that guy is so good.
No. In this case, we're talking about marksman. This is marksman.
In this case, I mean, ruler will. He's been a little bit late to the mages, and you know what? He's ruler, so he can do that. But no, I mean, I think it's something where like it is such like there are roles in League that are so different competitively. I mean, jungle is one of them. I think in NA we actually saw supports, at least in the dev system, really start to pick up and evolve when we changed our dev system format to get more stage games, to go into like Brox's point, because as a support, it's freaking impossible to practice that role in solo queue compared to comp if you are actually going to be a comp support, right? And marksman is just one where like if you have a team that is playing to peel around your marksman, yes, that role is OP. Like, but you have to make a team effort to like make sure that person's safe, and it's so much easier to do like in that setting compared to solo queue, where I feel like solo queue marksmen are going to complain, but yeah.
It's definitely an entirely different thing, but I also think, I mean, the solo queue, I would say, being an AD carrier is probably the weakest of the roles. It has the least agency, for the most part, because most games are decided in early game, and often the game is lost before the AD carry comes online. But in pro play, it's almost always in mid and late game that is decided, and at that point, the team that has funneled the most gold into the AD carry and mid laner, and that has the cleanest AD carry and mid laner, is the team that's going to win. That's why it's always those two roles that become like the huge superstars. That's why it's those roles that get paid the most, that people are the most excited about. Because if you're an AD carry, for example, and you take one misstep, you will get one shot and solo lose the game. But in the same way, if you're a reckless type of player who never dies at any point, it is very difficult for the enemy team to win the game. And I think there's metas where on top jungle and support, you can get away with having smaller champion pools or having bad mechanics. Like I remember the Sejuani days, for example, Trundle, like 0 mechanics required. All you need is a decent brain and you can make it work, right? But as an AD carry, again, the smallest mechanical mistake and you're gone and the game is lost.
It's funny that you say that's like the role that people are most excited about, because if you go and queue up for a game of League of Legends right now and you toggle on bot or AD carry, it will literally say you get priority because people don't want to queue that role. Like that role is in the bin.
That's the difference between solo queue and like comp play, as we're saying, right? Like in solo queue, AD carry is a thankless role. Like, you are going to get abandoned by your support. You're going to sit down there. You're probably going to be 3-manned if you're on red side, because it's so easy to dive.
Play safe under tower.
And then you'll try and walk back down to your tower, and there's that fucking bush. Why is that bush there? That bush is literally there for AD carries to die. And I think, like, Freak had enough. He's like, I'll show you who's got no mana now, okay? You are just fucked. Like, it's actually just there to screw you over, and it's thankless. But as like everyone said, the big names are mid and AD carry. Like, you look over the annals of League of Legends history, mid and AD carry, Faker, Guma, Ruler, Imp. I mean, obviously, I can name more players than that. I'm gonna stop now though, because my mind has gone blank for some reason. But there are more players. Piglet, there's another one. We got one out.
Yay,
but it's all the big names coming from there, right? And I think you see support as well often has a few big names like that because of how much playmaking comes from support. Like, maybe I'm just a support focused player, but Mata, Mad Life, you look back, Ming, like all of these great guys that just absolutely
support
dominated
bias for sure.
I mean, I think there is a support bias, but I don't think top lane has the same sort of name recognition. Although recently I think it's stepped up a little bit.
Support bias for sure.
Maybe I'm just support biased.
I can look through some worlds and be like, yep, this team won worlds because their top laner was the best. I feel like that's actually been big.
Maybe I'm misspeaking there. Then maybe I'm incorrect. You're right.
But I think you're right in the sense that like mid and AD probably are the most names that are remembered and like being damage dealer roles.
Yeah, flashy plays, you're doing damage. Everybody's like, whoa, they're so good. Mechanically, they're crazy. Like, I want to be just like them when I grow up. And then you realize, you grow up and you can't be just like them because they're actually good and you're kind of dog water. It happens.
Yeah.
I'm not talking from personal experience. I feel like it's really interesting to see like the LEC, the LCS kind of approach, and then also like just in terms of like how that looks at on the international stage. And I'm excited for spring for LEC. Sorry, LCS. I didn't know you guys were going on for the last 2 weeks. But I'm excited for the LEC because I think a lot of changes are coming through. And also in terms of like how the analyst desk and just like the casting and everything, you guys are really good, by the way. It's great. It's fun. It's a good time.
Yeah. It is a good time. We have a lot of fun. I think things, looking at the next split is going to change a little bit with the pre-recorded drafts. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how things develop. It feels a little bit like Formula One, though, the LEC, because it's the fight for second. Like G2 should win. If they don't win, it's probably because they've been trying some stuff out a lot of the time. They are the Max Verstappen of legal Verstappen.
Verstappen.
Is that how you pronounce it? You don't pronounce the N?
No, usually like in Dutch, when there's an N at the end of the word, you don't say it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. That's cool. Thanks.
Today I learned.
Max Verstappen, because he doesn't stop, or he's Max Stopper. Anyway, G2 are the best team in the league. They're gonna win. After that, maybe Fnatic. I think BDS look good as well, but there's always the question with like, is Adam back in the team? How's that gonna work? How much did that turmoil affect them? But yeah, I would go G2, BDS, Fnatic, and Mad on a level together. I wonder if Mad might just be a really good winter split team and then start to fall off a little bit as teams work them out a little bit more now that they've got tape on them. So
that's an interesting tier list. I mean, where would you put KC?
Oh.
I don't want the tweets.
I plead
go
the
for it,
fifth.
I'm
Medic.
good.
Come on.
I'm good. I would.
Hey,
Wait.
the memes.
Listen. Oh, I mean, I'll be interviewing. I'll be interviewing
Hope you got
a
that.
100% win rate for G2 when I'm interviewing for. I'm so win rate for KC when I'm interviewing. G2 actually has a really good win rate too when I'm hosting or interviewing. So great for that. But
Nice.
Cubby, you want to give us a tier list for the LEC? You want to just like literally you can just like throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. Like we're not gonna take
I
it
will
seriously.
say I missed out like in terms of I caught the very early split for LEC because that was the only league that was operating for a little bit. So I saw the first few weeks and then I kind of fell off as the season went on because like my schedule gets busy here in NA. This next split though, we're watching 100% of the LEC games, which will be fun. I'd say overall, I'm kind of curious like what you guys think about some of the middle of the pack teams. Like specifically for me, I thought SK actually showed like quite a bit of promise. I think
It was
Irrelevant.
winter split.
It was.
Yeah, SK are always good in winter. It's this weird
is.
thing that they have. Yeah.
But hey, Irrelevant seems pretty legit in the top lane with like what LEC is looking, and like Niski is still the jungle whisperer. I thought Isma like had a really nice split.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested. Like I know that also I've had experience with Niski teams over here in NA too. Sometimes his teams throughout the year kind of get figured out or fall off. But I don't know like what you guys feel about SK because I feel like for me this is actually a really interesting team where like it's some names that like were in and out of LEC and then Irrelevant is like actually just kind of a beast with Niski. I feel like this team for me is like actually one of the exciting middle of the pack teams and kind of wondering like what you guys think is at least like with how they're gonna fall. Will we see maybe Giant X have a better split because I feel like there's a lot of promise in that roster.
You do?
Yeah, I mean historically I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I was somewhat a fan of Jackie's. I thought Jackie's had some moments that were good and
Yeah,
bad. But
he's had a really good split. Yeah.
He looked good on
Pretty sick
Nico.
the back half.
He looked okay on Azir. Otherwise, he wasn't like that standout. I think going back to the SK, I think my big question with SK is always their bot lane. Partly because like 3 years ago, DOS put out a tweet saying that he didn't like my casting, and so I've hated him ever since. Obviously, but
That
also
makes so much sense.
yeah,
It's got
exactly.
personal
Right?
fast.
Also, Exa and DOS, like, they really show up at the start of the year, and then they seem to struggle to have as much impact as they did before. At least this was true last year. 2023, their winter, Exa was looking like one of the best AD carries in the league at the time. I don't think they showed up as much here in 2024. As you say, Irrelevant was really the star for SK alongside Isma. But if Exakit and Exakit and DOS can find that form again, I think they can be one of the best bot lanes in the league. It's the debate of that it's unsung promise. You know, there is promise there, but we haven't realized it. And it's similar to Patrick, I guess, on Giant X, actually. Patrick has had promise for so many years. He's for so long been this AD carry that can be great, that can be amazing, right? And we're just not quite seeing it. And at some point, you have to just say, well, until you start winning, I'm not going to put my faith in you. And I think that's where I am with SK and Giant X. Like, I see signs of life. I see good things sometimes. But until you actually start winning some shit, I'm not going to put any faith in you. So I would put them like 6th, 7th, 8th, probably in my list of where I expect them to be, you know?
All right.
I think that's
Broxah,
what's going to be interesting about LEC, that, you know, we have, I feel like, a clear top 4 in G2, Fnatic, BDS, Mad, and then we have everybody else just brawling it out and battling for the 5th place. And sure, with some of the changes happening to some of the lower tier teams, some of that could change coming into the spring split, but honestly, I would be quite surprised. I think a lot of the teams just have too many clear weaknesses that are too easy to exploit, and too many inconsistencies. But I do also have to say that a final point on SK, like, I think Exakick and DOS must have gotten a reality check by now. Like, I can imagine they thought they were gods after the start that they had in last year, then everything went downhill, and now they had a long off season to figure out, you know, what went wrong and how to prevent that from happening again. They've looked pretty okay so far, and I think players usually start peaking in like their 2nd year, so I think there is potential there for sure. But yeah, overall, like, the gap from top to bottom just seemed very big and kind of difficult to overcome.
Yeah. A bit, but, you know, since we used F1 terms earlier, sometimes the middle of the pack fight in the paddock's the most fun. And
yeah,
I don't know, I feel like with LEC, like, there is info from winner, but, like, I just remembered last year, like, how much Fnatic really came back, and that was a great story. Them obviously being a big brand, right? But they got Noah in the team, and all of a sudden, like, their bot lane started smashing, and I'm kind of curious, like, if there was like one dark horse team that you guys had to pick, like, moving forward, like, who would you put your eggs in the basket in terms of like the bottom 5? Like is there any like team like you believe can push top 4?
I would say Rogue. I instantly fall Rogue.
Okay.
Because I think Marcoon, Larsen, and Comp have all proven themselves in the past. They just had, I don't know what happened to that team. Like, they simply didn't look like a team. They had horrible team plan macro. Everybody were like playing really poorly individually in the winter split. But now they're gonna have a bit of a honeymoon phase with Finn coming in. I think Finn, even on Astralis, looked like a really solid top laner, and I think even in their comms, knowing from experience playing with him, he's gonna be able to have a say. He's gonna be able to make a difference, and even outside of the game can lift up the mood. Obviously, again, you never exactly know, but I think they have so many proven players who are hungry and motivated, and I could see them turning it around.
Yeah, I think I actually agree with Broxah, but just to be contrarian, I'll go Heretics. Zyru will entirely change the landscape of that team for some reason that I'm not really sure of. But I think if I were being serious, I'd agree with Broxah. I do also want to say, I think a lot of the teams at the lower side of the pack struggled because of how short the gap was between preseason and the start of the season.
Yeah.
You really had to be on the ball with how big the changes were and what your meta read was to look good. And I think the lower quality of LEC that we definitely saw in this winter, it can be ascribed, at least partly, to how, like, they had a week, basically. And yes, they could scrim on the patch beforehand, but
that's fair.
You basically had a week between the patch coming in and having to start play games. So.
Yeah. And different teams, different reads on the patch. That's also huge. Different scrim bubbles, I think. It's all kind of like played into it. But now with spring coming through, changes as well for the draft, I'm excited. Like, you know, I'm looking forward to it. Like, I'm happy to see Carmine Core, Mad Lions Koi, you know, the fans going crazy. I'm here for it. I might even join. Who knows? I'm not gonna say which team though, but I'm just gonna sit there and like absorb the.
Just cheer on the overall nationalism, pretty much.
Yeah, just be like, oh yes, let's go, League of Legends,
let's go,
like and
team,
subscribe.
go sports,
go esports, electronic sports. Wow, we just came up with that. Oh, we're so different, guys. Look at us. LCS prediction. I'm gonna have to start with you again, Cubby, because like you gotta give us.
Wait, can I go before Cubby because I have some thoughts and I feel Cubby's going to say them, and then I'm not going to have anything to add.
Go for it.
The smart one.
What do you got, man?
Well, no, I don't want to sound smart. I just have limited thoughts, and I feel if Cubby says them, I'm not going to be able to add anything on afterwards. So
go for it.
Is that fine?
What do you got? Yeah, please.
Okay, sure. Well, I think Quid looks really good. I think River looks really good as well, and I really like 100 Thieves. I'm really impressed by this team. I was surprised because I thought coming in, like the introduction of Sniper, I was like, oh, maybe he'll be good. Quid looked really bad last year, let's be honest. Obviously, River was good on Golden Guardians, but I think their position is not fraudulent, and that surprised me. Mechanically, they look really solid. Meech and Ayla look good in the bot lane as well. So I'm really impressed by this team. I don't think they'll win the split. I think Cloud9 are still going to win, or FlyQuest possibly. Depends how Cloud9, they've started to win again. Maybe they'll continue that. But I think 100 Thieves might be in the final, and that impresses me a lot from this team. So shout out 100 Thieves. Good job. Go Nade Shot. Woo!
Send him merch. Woo!
No, don't. I'm BDS ambassador here. I can't wear anyone else's merch. Ugh.
No, have you not seen their merch? Like the Pokemon.
Their merch is banging. It's true.
Crazy.
What size are you, Ginny? If they send it to me, I can just say I'm your size and you can take it.
I will take an M because I like.
I'm an M.
That for sure.
I'm an M. Anyway, that was my point. I like 100 Thieves. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're exciting. For me, River's my MVP of the split at the moment. I think that guy's been actually a beast from the jungle. And what Brox was saying with giving people time, props to 100 Thieves sticking with Quid. I think no one on the outside would have stuck with Quid, and they did, and it's really paid off. Quid's been really good, especially seeing Golden Glue at the helm for coach. I know that he's someone that I covered his teams in Challengers League, and his teams are always pretty competitive. And I know that he and 100 Thieves are really proud they're the bloodiest team of all 4 major regions. That was definitely the mentality that Golden Glue approached the dev teams with. It's like, hey guys, you can go out and fist fight, right? And we're going to get better over time. And he had one iteration of teams with really good hands, and then one team, the Disguise team, is more of experience and brain. I think they won with hands and macro, but it's fun watching those Zoomers go out there and just kind of try and win with hands. It definitely is made for some exciting games in the LCS. I think this upcoming week, we've got 3 games. C9's got a pretty easy schedule. So I expect C9 to potentially top out of the table because FlyQuest actually has TL and energy. So I think the race for first could be kind of spicy. I think FlyQuest will take it though. And it's been really fun for me also watching Busio this split on FlyQuest. I think that he's a very talented player as an individual, and I think he's really starting to come into his own as a support on that team, which I think the team was definitely built to support the rookies in the bot side. In fact, FlyQuest build it made a lot of sense to me, and I think it's really paid off the split.
Yeah, I'm really sad that we lost Inspired and Whippo. I'm going to be honest. Those are 2 players
Inspired
I really wanted to
classic
keep in
NA, man. They got to take our players.
They were such good guys, and they were really enjoyable to just be around as well as people. So that made me sad that they both wanted to stay in NA. But obviously, they're playing really well, and credit to the region to keep them, right? But yeah,
I also think as a player.
You love Team Liquid, huh? You love Team Liquid, huh? You think Team Liquid are going to win, Broxah? Interesting.
I'm going to get some bonus points from Cubby here. Watch me. So,
okay.
I think with my perspective, playing in both EU and NA, ever since I joined CL in 2020, I always said that the gap between EU and NA is not as big as we thought it's been for years now. It all really showed at Worlds last year, right? But I think in the past we've just been used to having G2 and Fnatic playing so well from Europe, and there wasn't really much competition out of NA. But now, it's kind of a free for all, and anything can happen. And obviously, with some top players from Europe, like Buevo and Inspired, playing on FlyQuest, accompanied by another European in Jensen, there's a lot of really solid teams over there. And I think coming into MSI and Worlds this year, I honestly wouldn't be surprised seeing NA destroy Europe again, because some of those top teams are looking really solid, and I think most European teams, if not all, even G2, I've been flaming G2 on the analyst as quite a lot this year, because with the way they're playing the mid game and macro and all, man, they might just get steamrolled. It's
I will say
exactly what's going to happen.
Check PayPal.
Yeah, I mean, first off, yeah, that I will say that like when I watch EU, I think that you like as a region, EU plays side lane better than NA. I think like NA is kind of allergic to side laning still, and that like will hamper us. I know TL dropped their game against C9, but Impact was kind of beasting that game in the sides, which was really fun to see. Yeah, I don't know. Like NA, it feels like
on the boys as well, right? Like he talked about side laning a lot on the boys. It was a really good episode. Actually, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I think an area where NA is going to have a clear advantage. As of right now, if things are going to continue looking the way they're looking in the LEC, is top side. Like I think NA is really stacked for jungle in particular. We have River, Inspired, Umti, Contracts, just to name a couple.
Blabber.
Like Blabber is there as well.
Yeah.
Like those 5 guys can easily compete with the best junglers from the LEC. And top lane from Europe has for years been rather questionable, I would say. I mean, sure for NA as well, but guys like Bwipo and even Impact and the Team Liquid that's not performing particularly well are really solid and have also proven in the past that they can beat some of the best Eastern top laners. And I could easily see them coming into an international tournament and actually making a difference and winning lanes against some of the top tier top laners.
It's funny that you mentioned that because like there's a common phrase thrown around with GMs here in NA that if every role was as deep as jungle, then our region would be saved. Because like even the league that I cover, Challengers League, like we have really good junglers in that league. I like Shaden was on LCS stage, like he's beasting. We've got 3 other guys like that. I feel like it's just the deepest role, like top down throughout the entire region. And then top lane, a good friend of mine, Kelsey Moser, has been trying to be an NA top lane advocate. So I find it funny you bring that up too, because she was like looking at NA tops versus the U tops going in this past Worlds. I was like, I feel like NA could actually have edge in this role, and I feel like that ended up being, it's definitely improved a little bit for NA. I don't know. I'm really curious what ends up happening though with MSI, because I feel like some of the like not having a lot of stage games, I think that there are odds that we could have a younger team like 100 Thieves go international, which I feel like would be great for the region. Like I think NRG, like those guys some of the core hadn't gone international, and like others like Contracts hadn't gone international in a while. And when you have another team that gets exposed to like whatever you end up facing internationally, like for scrims and that meta, I feel like that actually really helps bringing that back to the region, having another team experience that.
100%. I think it's one of the bad things about G2 being so good in Europe as well. One of the great times in European League was when Fnatic and G2 were consistently going to international events and were challenging each other at the top of Europe, because it just elevates everything, steel sharpens steel. I will say about EU tops, I think they've stepped up a little bit this year. Like Broken Blade looked really good generally, and apparently does a lot of shot calling behind the stage. And then Irrelevant looks good. Mirwin is actually looking really strong as well. Yeah. I'm not saying we have the depth that perhaps NA has, but I actually think top in EU for a long time has been a dearth of talent. And now we're starting to see, not like I don't want to, flame Odawamne and, Shigenda. They're good players, or even like Finn. But now we're starting to see top laners that I think maybe over the next couple of years we'll be able to start challenging, hopefully Eastern top laners for lane control.
I think my worry with all those top laners is, can they actually play the way they're currently playing and survive laning phase against the best LCK and LPL top laners? Because I'm not entirely sure. Like Mirwin, I think is solid, but he's kind of been known for his cheese picks, and I think if he plays a standard matchup, he's going to have a tough time, especially as a rookie. Broken Blade, one of his biggest streams is playing all his carries. Sure, he can play Cassandra, but you're going to have to go the carry route, and is that really going to work? And I just think maybe it's like the fact that Bwipo and Impact are partly proven. Like I feel like I know that they're going to perform internationally. I'm 100% sure that they can actually go big no matter who they play against. Whereas in Europe, it's like, it's kind of a tough time. I don't really see the same X factor there as of right now. But again, like someone like Broken Blade with G2 sticking together and him, starting to get more experience playing standard matchups and tanks and not relying as much on the carries, actually being a good tank player, I think could definitely go a long way. Yeah,
that's fair. I think that, I don't know, I'm excited. Like now, like Medic, you were talking about 100 Thieves. I want to see Sniper go international because I think
So
for
do
me,
I.
like the
That
biggest
guy,
thing with
man.
him, like he was so hyped, like especially like for you guys across the pond, right? It was really funny, like for me as someone that had covered him, like I streamed his like first game competitively, like from like our little podcast we had, right? And from like talking with Viper, his brother too, like he had so much hype behind him, and rightfully so. Like for me, he's like a generational prospect, which in this game is like I don't really think it's happened before. Like when you have pedigree, like his twins, Challenger, his older brother played pro. He's
Weren't they like
freak.
top 3 on the NA ladder? Like
Yeah.
the 3 brothers? It was crazy.
They've all hit rank 1 at some point. It's crazy.
Sheesh.
But like he wasn't the most exciting rookie for me. I was actually really excited about Meech and Masu coming in, just based on the gameplay. And Sniper's really impressed me, and like even the coaches, in terms of like how fast he's been. Pretty much like they say that all the feedback they're giving to mostly Sniper, who is the youngest player, and he's doing a nice job of like taking that, trying to improve, and like having a good mental. Which I'll give the kid a lot of props. Like he has a lot of confidence and a good head on his shoulders. And I think that like it's been really fun kind of seeing him step into his own on the big stage and do it, because he is very like much outperformed the expectations that I had for him as someone that has watched a lot, like all of his tape pretty much. So I want to see him go international and see how much he can learn, right? That could be like really fun to see if that like really just buffs him up this young in his career. Because I feel like JoJo, when he went over like to MSI and Worlds with EG, like he like learned really fast, like, oh god, like I have a long way to go still to like get to that level, right? And I feel like knowing that early on like can be a good driving factor to like trying to hit those levels.
Yeah, it's like they leave a boy and they come back a man.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like the vibe that I got when you talk like he has to go internationally and he has to learn and see.
You gotta go
he
get
has
bodied a
long
little
way to
bit,
go.
you know?
And he comes back and he's like, oh, I got bodied. I got absolutely stomped.
Next time on MILF Hunters.
Whoa, that
Oh my
was
God.
okay. Context is missing.
Yeah, the
everything.
context is really missing there. I realized that. I
you know
forgot that
what?
was
I would-
before the show started.
I would like the context to stay missing.
No, because
Yeah.
now I just said next time on MILF
No,
Hunters.
that's okay. That's okay.
It was
Next time
also
on the
MILF
jungle.
Manor. It was MILF Manor.
Oh, MILF Manor? Okay.
yeah, MILF Manor. That's important.
MILF Hunters
the show
sounds
we
a
were
little
talking
bit
about.
more aggressive as a show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe Medic has been watching something before we
Well,
joined
no,
the
you can tell I
podcast.
haven't seen the show because I don't even know the name of the show. Right?
Maybe
So,
you know what would be crazy if there actually exists a show called MILF Hunter and like
I'm gonna Google it quickly.
then it's like what
MILF? No, I can't Google MILF Hunters. I can't.
Incognito.
It's over, man. There's no going back.
You gotta go incognito for that one.
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
stuff that you would expect comes up if you type in MILF Hunters.
Yeah,
into
maybe
your-
don't type it in. This is a podcast about League of Legends, video games, LEC, LCS, international stage. I think we broke down a lot of exciting topics, and it's just building a bit more hype, a lot more hype for me at least, going into the LEC. Looking forward to the changes with the draft. I'm looking forward to seeing the teams again with the changes that they've made, and we've already done a little bit of a tier list in terms of what we can expect. But I guess G2 is winning it all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again.
Yay. Like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for the first episode of The Jungle. We're going to be back again next week. So as Medic said, like and subscribe. Stay up to date with all the content that we're going to be throwing your way. And take care of yourselves.